everybody. This is Tomaskycast. This is, in fact, the inaugural edition of Tomaskycast, a production of New Republic Video. And I'm very pleased to be joined for this first one by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator, hello.
Hello. Good to be here with you.
Great. Thanks so much for coming. Let's get started. Where do things stand right now? So Bernie wants 3.5 in the reconciliation bill. Jim Clyburn says it may end up at 2.5. Joe Manchin says I'm at 1.5 trillion. Where are we?
Oh, listen, where I think we are is that we start with what do we need? You know, this idea that you start at a top line number, no, you start with what are we trying to get done? Then you say, okay, what does that cost and what kind of trades do I need to make? But for everybody who doesn't want to go to 3.5 trillion, so is it childcare you want to take off the table? Is it home and community-based care? How about universal preschool? You just want to say, to 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, we'd rather the billionaires keep the money than you actually get a good start on your education. Or is it Medicare, vision, dental, hearing, or the climate crisis? Really? We're going to leave that money with giant corporations and tax cheats instead of putting it into fighting the climate crisis? So that's where I start, is the things we need. If you think there are things in this package we don't need, then we should sit down and talk about that. Absolutely. But the second thing, and you notice I was kind of weaving it in, and that is how we're going to pay for this. This is not a spending bill. This is, we're going to make these investments in things like universal childcare and community college, and we're going to do those things by asking billionaires to pay more, by asking giant corporations, Amazon, I'm looking at you, not to report $11 billion in profits to your shareholders and then turn around and pay nothing in taxes. So real corporate profits tax, and by beefing up the IRS so they actually have the people and the information to be able to go after the really wealthy tax cheats who have really complicated ways of cheating. Those three things, if we put them in place, a wealth tax, a corporate profits tax on making sure everybody pays something, and going after the tax cheats, those three would more than pay for $3.5 trillion in investments. So that's the discussion right now.
Yeah. What's your reaction to the House's revenue plan? I assume you think it comes up pretty short.
Really short. I mean, like short. Not only short, it's also, what the heck? The billionaires, can I just do billionaires for a minute?
Please.
I just gotta talk billionaires here, Michael. The 99% in America last year paid about 7.2% of their total wealth in taxes. The top 0.1% paid about 3.2%. That's just not fair. I mean, it's just not right. And Americans have understood that, the game is rigged against them for a long, long time. That go round of seeing the tax returns from the richest Americans to see that Jeff Bezos, what does he declare as his income every year? He declares about the same income as a public school teacher in Boston. Are you kidding me? And so he pays the same kind of taxes on that income. How? Because he borrows against his ginormous wealth in order to take joyrides into outer space, while all across this country, people are struggling to find and pay for childcare. People are struggling to make it through college. People are struggling when they've retired to pay for vision and dental. So this is saying we need a little more fairness in the system here, and I think we can get it.
How do you get to that wealth? I know some liberals and progressives, economists, people who think that it's hard as a practical matter to tax that wealth. So what's your answer to that?
Well, let me start with the fact that well over half of it is in the stock market. Do you know how hard it is to value assets held in the stock market? I mean, all you need is a quote. We're done. It is really, really easy. And, you know, real property is valued pretty much every year. That's what property taxes are all about, that everybody pays. People who have insurance on their Van Goghs and their Rembrandts, those things are valued every single year. People who have $1 billion in wealth also have, it's like wealth nannies who tend to that $1 billion, and they carefully try to grow it and nurture it, make sure it gets bigger year after year after year, which it does. And that also requires they value it. So you can get, it's like kind of like the 90-10 rule, right? You can get a ton of the valuation and collection really, really easy. There'll be some parts that are harder, but once you've valued them once, one of two things is true. Either the person still has the same thing the next year, so the valuation effort is a whole lot less, or they sold it, in which case they have more cash or more of something else. So I have to say, I think the idea of, oh, this is just too hard, it's just, no, it's, it's something we can do. And it's something we could do that would literally raise $3 trillion. Do you know what we could do with $3 trillion? We just were talking about it, right? What we could do with an investment of $3 trillion in America, whatever you believe. If you believe that we ought to be doubling and tripling our investment in the climate crisis, let's just put a wealth tax in place. We can pay for that. If you believe we ought to be retiring a whole bunch of the national debt, hey, wealth tax will help you do that. The money is there. They are not paying at the same rate as everybody else. It's just time to, just level the playing field a little bit here.
Your top priority on the investment side is National Network of Child Care centers, right? So it's 700 billion, I believe, is what you asked for in your bill.
So 700 is what I asked for. All we got in that reconciliation package is about 450 billion.
Yeah.
So my view on this is, okay, 700 billion was what it would take to build it for 10 years. So let's build it for 7 years, but build a strong and robust plan. Let's get it in place right now so it's available to mamas and to daddies all across this country. Also, so that we immediately raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America. That's going to help us expand supply here. Let's get it in place as fast as we can, because you know where we stand right now, Michael. Millions of women out of the workforce, and 1 out of 4 says, I can't go back because I don't have childcare. It's just, I don't have it. I don't have it. And for a lot of parents, they just say, I don't even look at it because I can't afford it. This is, for so long, America has invested in roads and bridges, and the big explanation has always been because it helps people get to work. Right? Helps move those goods and services, helps keep our economy going. Well, wake up to the 21st century. If we want people with children to be able to go into the workforce, then we need childcare. And that means a federal investment. Failure to invest in childcare is actually costing us GDP. McKinsey did a big study on this. So you should care about the investment in childcare, even if you don't have children or grandchildren, even if you never were a child, even if you don't like children, it's still the right investment for the economy. And it's why virtually every other high-income country does it. They make that investment in childcare. It's time for America to catch up with it.
So I'm just really curious. You're sitting in the Mansfield room there with your colleagues at lunch, and
This is not the Mansfield room.
Well, I mean,
this is my cave in the basement.
I mean, in theory, when you do that.
I was just there 20 minutes ago.
Right. And you make these arguments to some of your colleagues who are lowballing this. And what do they say? I mean, this is going to help their states as much as it's going to help Massachusetts. What do they say?
So far, all anybody ever says to me is, "Oh no, we're not cutting childcare." I love childcare.
Okay. Well,
So that's why I said I start this with, okay, then what do you want to cut?
yeah,
And so far I haven't heard anything.
yeah.
But I get them all to say not childcare, and
Okay.
because
Well,
that's my job. I mean,
yeah. I would assume that everybody from Joe Manchin and Josh Gottheimer to AOC, everybody realizes that the Democrats' only hope of holding on to the majority, certainly in the House, the Senate's a different matter, but the only hope of holding on to the majority in the House is passing something, and passing something substantial, and going back to your states and districts and spending next year bragging about what you've done and saying the person running against me would have voted against that. Does everybody indeed understand that?
boy, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
You know, I keep making the argument, we gotta honor our promises. We made real promises in this last election in 2020, and we need to follow through on those promises. We said, give us a majority, and here's what we'll do. Well, we have a majority now. It may be the skinniest majority in the history of the country, but it is a majority, and we need to step up and produce. And then we need to turn around and go back to the voters and say, we told you what we were going to do. We did it. And now you can hold us accountable. You can reelect us or elect more people who agree with us, or you can turn us out and say, nope, you like the guys who won't invest in childcare, who won't spend one penny to help families that are struggling with childcare, that are dealing with an elderly parent they're trying to take care of. Not one penny on climate crisis, not one penny on housing costs that are through the roof, not one penny on expanding Medicare. I'm ready to have that fight. I'm ready to have that fight in every single state across this country.
And what's the status now of the other bill, the infrastructure bill? Depending on when the votes happen, it's pretty complicated.
Well, I don't even think of it as complicated. From the beginning, we said, here's the big package of what we need to get done. And you could kind of sketch it out on the back of an envelope. There it is. It's big. And there were a group of folks in the Senate who said, well, you know, we're not going to get Republicans on a bunch of this stuff, like childcare and climate. So, but there are some things they might join us on, like roads and bridges. So those Democrats said to the rest of us, you guys hold off for a little bit,
Yeah.
and let us try to negotiate a bipartisan infrastructure deal. And we said in response, okay, you guys can go negotiate, but understand this, it is still one package. That is, you don't get your part without our getting our part. All of us have to be willing, because frankly, this falls to the Democrats.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to step up across the board. And that's what's known as reconciliation. That's what everybody agreed to. So right now, I see it as the roads and bridges part of this is sitting there humming in the House while we get the rest of the pieces together. And it's hard. We have less time than they had, and we have a much bigger, many more moving parts. We got to get it together because they go through together.
I want to quickly cover just two more things.
Sure.
I know that monopoly power and antitrust is a big interest of yours. This is a little bit off the news. And in your presidential campaign, you had a plan for that, as you said. Biden has made, I think you'd agree, good appointments. Leah Khan, Cantor at Antitrust, but it took a long time for Cantor to get there, and they seem to be moving slowly. What's happening on the antitrust front in the administration? Do you know?
So Department of Justice is independent, so they make their independent judgments about where they need to go. I can say things publicly, but I don't have backroom conversations with them. They make their judgments. But I have a lot of confidence in
Have you
Jonathan.
had conversations with Cantor?
No, I said I have a lot of confidence with Cantor.
Right.
In Cantor. And the reason for that is just his record.
Yeah.
He has practically been a private attorney general for a long time now. he's been out there, and that's why I'm very enthusiastic about him. I certainly had a lot of conversations with him long before he was ever nominated to that spot. Lena Khan over in FTC,
Yeah.
it's more appropriate to be able to have conversations there. Congress has more direct oversight over what the FTC is doing. And, I think she's trying to make sure that she's got her team behind her. The place has just been decimated.
Mhm.
She's got to have people, hands. The good news is there are a lot of folks who want to come and do this work. I mean, this is kind of, I feel a little when I talk to Lena, like I'm put back where I was 10 years ago when I was setting up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Yeah.
People were saying from all around the country, pick me. I want to come be part of this. I want to help set our country in a better direction where big banks don't get to cheat people. Lena, I think, is a lot of people want to come on board and help her. And I think she has a very ambitious, but also well-grounded in the law agenda going forward. And so I'm solidly behind where she is on this. I'm very happy about it.
Last thing, just this morning, Tuesday morning, you called on the Federal Reserve to break up Wells Fargo. Talk about that for a little bit, explain that to people. And I wonder also if you could address, do you support President Biden reappointing Jerome Powell?
So I have been stunned by not just that Wells Fargo has cheated consumers and got caught red-handed once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times that we know of, just in fairly recent history. I have called for the CEO of Wells Fargo to be fired, not once, but twice. And it has happened, not once, but twice. New people have been put in, and they're still doing it. They're still cheating. So this latest one that came out, where it turns out they have been caught cheating, there was a fine imposed, they were supposed to engage in remediation to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, and they were cheating on that. And you just reach a point where you say, we're done. Just break them up. They don't get to be a giant holding company financial institution. There can be a consumer bank over here. You can sell it off to somebody who doesn't engage in these kind of activities. You can break it up regionally. There are a lot of different ways you could do this. And then those other giant pieces you can sell off. Because here's the thing. First of all, we don't need a giant financial institution whose business model, as displayed by their past activities, is cheating as many Americans as possible. We just don't need a company like that. We got other ways that banking services can be delivered. But the second part is any bank that is engaging in that kind of activity not only poses a threat to its individual investors, it poses a threat to the whole economy. If they're cheating in ways that you can figure it out because they're adding insurance on car loans that nobody asked for, I guarantee they are not squeaky clean everywhere else. And they are loading up on risks. That's risky. Sometimes I think, Michael, what are the lessons we should have learned out of the 2008 financial crisis? And one of them is companies that cheat to boost their own profits put every American ultimately at risk. And it is important for our regulators to step in and shut that down. With Wells Fargo, I've tried everything I know to do. I've called for everything I know to call for. It's time to break them up.
And Jerome Powell?
The Fed is the one with the power here.
Yeah.
I have said before, I am concerned about his attitude toward regulation. When he first came up for confirmation, the first question I asked him is, in all of the pieces of financial regulation of the biggest institutions, can you name 1 or 2 that you think maybe should be a little tighter, we should be a little more careful? Couldn't think of a single one. And what we've seen is over and over and over, when you got a chance, just weaken that regulation just a little here and a little there. And that has consequences over time. So I have concerns.
Yes. Senator Elizabeth Warren, thanks so much. Really appreciate
Thank you
your
for
time.
having me.